My uncle said he'd invest my savings, just like he did for his kids. I gave him $36,000. He sent monthly updates, fake. When I found out, I called him crying. He said, "You really thought you were one of us?" I drove to his office that night, and what I saw through the window made my stomach turn. I'm 29 now. This all started 6 years ago when I was 23 and thought I had my whole life figured out. I grew up in Erie, Pennsylvania. My mom raised me on her own. She worked nights at St. Vincent Hospital for over 2 decades just to make sure I had clothes that fit and food on the table. We lived in a 2-bedroom apartment above a nail salon. It wasn't much, but it was ours. My dad dipped out before I was even born, so my uncle, Rick, was the closest thing I had to a father figure. Rick was her older brother. The successful one. Ran his own financial consulting firm. At least that's what he told everyone. His kids went to private schools. They wore designer shoes before they could drive. Rick and his wife lived in a 5-bedroom house near Frontier Park. He always had a new car. Lexus one year, Mercedes the next. Every holiday he'd hand out $100 bills like they were flyers. Everyone said he was a genius with money. So when I graduated from the University of Pittsburgh with a degree in accounting and landed my first full-time job, I felt like I had finally made it out of the cycle. I lived at home, drove a beat-up Honda, and worked long hours, but I managed to save $36,000 in under 2 years. I was proud of that money. That was my sweat. My choices. My future. That's when Rick offered to help. It was at a 4th of July cookout. Everyone was drinking beer in the backyard. I was sitting at the picnic table, checking my bank app, and Rick sat down next to me. "You've done well," he said. "Not a lot of young guys your age know how to hold on to money. Most blow it. You've got good instincts, must be the blood." I laughed. He always made it seem like we shared this secret, like we were part of a private club in the family. The smart ones. Then he leaned in. "You know, I manage portfolios for the boys. I've built them real futures. I could do the same for you. Just like family." Looking back, that line was poison. Just like family. I said I'd think about it. He smiled and said, "You've got time. But smart money never sleeps." 3 weeks later, I transferred $36,000 into a brokerage account he set up under his firm. I signed some forms. Didn't even read them fully, I trusted him. For 2 years, I got monthly email updates. They looked legit. Professional headers, breakdowns of holdings, charts, graphs, even little commentary blurbs like "solid returns on the emerging markets this quarter" or "ETF allocation balancing out nicely, consider adding more to dividend growth next cycle." Every month I read them. Every month I felt more secure, more confident that I was doing the right thing. Then last year, I decided I wanted to buy a house. Nothing big, just a small 2-bedroom fixer-upper out near Mill Creek. I had some money in my savings, but I figured I'd pull $10,000 from the portfolio for the down payment. I emailed Rick. Nothing. I waited 3 days. Then I called his cell. No answer. Left a voicemail. No call back. I waited another week. Sent another email. Finally got a reply. "Hey bud, traveling for a conference in Boston. We'll circle back next week." Next week came. No reply. That's when I felt it. That sinking feeling in your stomach when something you believed in starts to fall apart. I started calling every day. I texted, emailed, sent a certified letter to his office. No answer. So I called his son, my cousin Derek. He and I were close growing up. I figured maybe he knew what was going on. When I told him about the investment, he got quiet. Then he said, "Wait. What? My dad never managed anything for me. He told me to set up a Roth IRA and left me alone." I said, "But he told me he was investing for you, that you guys had solid returns. I got updates every month." Derek said, "Dude, my dad doesn't even know how to use Excel." That was the moment I realized something was seriously wrong. I went to my mom's place that night and told her everything. Showed her the emails, the forms I signed, the wire transfer. She stared at the screen like she was frozen. Then she called Rick. He picked up. She was yelling. I mean screaming like I hadn't heard her since I was a kid. He told her, "You people are so dramatic," and hung up. I sat there shaking. I called him next. I was crying when he answered. I asked him, "Why? Why would you lie to me?" He didn't even hesitate. "You really thought you were one of us," he said. "You're not. You're her kid." It felt like someone took a brick to my chest. That's when everything changed. Something in me snapped. I got in my car and drove downtown. His office was in a brick building across from an old record store. It was almost 10 p.m. His lights were still on. I parked across the street and walked over. I stayed in the shadows near the side window. He was inside, sitting at a desk, champagne in his hand, laughing with two guys in suits. Behind him was a whiteboard. It had names written on it. My name. Next to it, $36K clean. Below that, Janine, $12,000. Still believes in the growth fund. Then, Sean's college fund. LOL. He wasn't just stealing from me. He was running some kind of personal scam ring. I went home that night and didn't sleep. Not a single minute. I felt sick, angry, humiliated. I didn't even want to look at myself in the mirror. But I wasn't going to the police. Not yet. I was going to make him pay. I didn't tell anyone what I saw that night. Not my mom. Not Derek. Not even my best friend, Jake. I went silent. I stopped checking my email. I ignored Rick's last text, which came 2 days later. You're acting emotional. This is why you'll always struggle. That was the last message I got from him. The next few weeks, I was a ghost. I still went to work, but I was barely there. I stared at spreadsheets but didn't process a thing. My manager pulled me aside and asked if everything was okay. I told him I was just tired. I wasn't tired. I was planning. First, I started digging into Rick's firm. He called it Rick Waters Financial Management. Sounded official, but when I checked the state business registry, it wasn't even registered properly. Just a DBA he used under another LLC, Waters Holdings. I searched for any certifications. Nothing. No CFP. No FINRA registration. He wasn't licensed. Not even close. The office lease? Not in his name. It was rented under a shell company. The bank account listed on my wire transfer? Different name entirely. Pinehurst Strategies LLC. That's when it hit me he wasn't just lying. He built an entire system to scam people and cover his tracks. I checked the wire transfer receipt. I had the routing number. I contacted the bank. They said since I sent it willingly to a registered business, it wasn't fraud from their side. They couldn't do anything. That's when I knew if I wanted justice, I had to take it myself. I took a week off work and drove to Buffalo, where my friend Jake lived. Jake's brother, Evan, worked in cybersecurity. Not hacking, but close. The kind of guy who knew how to track digital footprints. I told him everything. He looked at me for a long time and said, "If you're serious, I can help. But this is going to get messy." I said, "Good." Evan got to work. He found Rick's IP address through the fake monthly reports. He used tracking pixels in the emails, traced them to 2 locations. His office and a lake house I didn't even know he owned up in Chautauqua. We dug deeper. Evan pulled metadata off the PDFs Rick had been sending. They weren't generated by any financial software. They were made in Photoshop. The same templates. Slight changes month to month. No real data. I felt sick again. But I also felt sharp. Focused. Then Evan said, "Do you want to know how deep this goes?" I said yes. He found that Rick had at least 5 other people wired money to the same Pinehurst account. 2 were older women from Erie. 1 was a retired vet. 1 was a single mom in Ohio. All of them had been told, "I'll invest it just like I did for my family." He used the same exact phrase. That broke me, because I realized I wasn't special. I was just one of many, and no one had done anything about it. So I made a plan. I needed proof. Not just emails. I needed audio, visual, something that could expose him. I bought a cheap voice recorder, one of those you clip to your shirt. Then I called Rick and said I wanted to meet. I told him I was sorry for overreacting and that I wanted to talk things through. I said I missed the way things used to be. He agreed. We set the meeting for Friday, 3 p.m. at his office. I showed up early, dressed plain. I brought coffee, smiled like nothing was wrong. He acted smug. All grins. Said, "I knew you'd come around. I was just waiting for you to cool off." We sat down. I pressed record in my pocket. I started asking questions. Soft ones. I let him talk. And boy, did he. He said, "I keep everything off the radar, you know? That's how you make money. People don't need all the details. They just want results." I asked about my money. He said, "I moved it into other vehicles. Don't worry. It's growing." I asked about the fake updates. He laughed. You think people read that stuff? It's just to keep folks comfortable. You can slap some numbers on a chart and they'll eat it up. That was it. I had what I needed. But I didn't stop there. That night, I sent copies of the recording and the metadata files to a friend of mine who worked at a local news station. I didn't tell them who I was. Just sent it anonymously. Then I made a second packet with everything and mailed it to the Pennsylvania Department of Banking and Securities. Still, I didn't feel satisfied. I wanted him to know it was me. I wanted him to look me in the eyes and understand that I was the one who dragged him out into the light. So I planned one last thing. The following week, Rick was hosting a seminar at the Erie Civic Center. He did it every year of family financial futures. Seniors, young couples, all packed in for his garbage speeches about wealth freedom and generational power. I signed up under a fake name. I sat in the third row, hat pulled low, watched as he walked onto the stage, grinning like a king. And then 5 minutes into his speech, right as he started bragging about how I built my nephews and sons into young millionaires. The big screen behind him lit up. I had sent a flash drive to the AV tech. It played the audio. That clip of him saying, "People don't need the details, you just slap some numbers on a chart." The room went quiet. Dead quiet. Rick froze. I saw his face change like he forgot how to breathe. Then people started shouting. The cops didn't come that day. But his business died in real time. And I was just getting started. The seminar blew up faster than I expected. 1 minute Rick was commanding the stage, the next minute people were yelling, some got up and walked out, others stayed, filming him with their phones. The AV guy, bless him, let the full 40-second clip play. Rick tried to laugh it off at first, said something about doctored recordings, but you could see it in his face. He knew. I left before the chaos really kicked in. Slipped out the side exit and drove straight to a coffee shop where Evan was waiting. I slid into the booth and he just looked at me and said, "Well, damn." That night, the news ran the story. I hadn't used my name, but they ran with the headline, "Local financial advisor caught in alleged fraud scheme, anonymous whistleblower provides audio proof." Within 2 days, Rick's office was closed. The windows were papered up. Phone disconnected. His wife, Connie, deleted all her social media accounts. But the twist? That wasn't the end of it. One of the women Rick scammed, a woman named Patrice, found me. She emailed me through a burner account I'd used for the anonymous tips. Said she recognized her name on that whiteboard I mentioned. She was in that seminar too. She had invested $45,000 from her late husband's life insurance policy. We started talking. Then another man reached out. Frank, 67, retired Air Force. Then one more. Maria, single mom, Cleveland area. All of them had been promised family treatment. All of them got the same fake reports. We started meeting weekly over Zoom. It became a kind of underground support group, but also a strategy team. We had one goal, ruin Rick. And then Maria dropped the bomb. She had dated Rick briefly. He met her through some investment workshop in Cleveland 2 years back. They hooked up for a few months. She said he used a second phone when they were together. Kept it hidden in his glove box. I didn't think much of it until she told us the phone number. I ran it through Evan's system. It was active. And it was tied to a Venmo account under the name Mickey R. That account had dozens of transactions labeled with consult, thanks, and even one that said, for keeping things quiet. That's when it all came together. Rick wasn't just running a fake investment gig. He was laundering money through dummy accounts, paying off people to stay quiet, and possibly cheating on his wife using client money to fund his side relationships. We took screenshots, copied transaction histories, and cross-referenced everything we could. Meanwhile, Rick started popping up in new places. His face showed up on Reddit. Someone shared the seminar video on r/scams. Then it got picked up on TikTok. Within a week, his name was trending. But here's where it took another turn. One day, Evan called me. You're not gonna like this," he said. "Rick just filed for Chapter 7. I pulled over, sat in my car, looked it up. Sure enough, Rick had declared bankruptcy. Claimed he had less than $5,000 in assets and $300,000 in debt. His office lease? Canceled. His home? In foreclosure process. Even the lake house? Transferred in divorce proceedings. He was hiding it all. Moving assets. Playing the court system. Declaring himself broke. That's when I snapped again. I told Evan, we're not just going to expose him. We're going to find everything he buried. And Evan said, then we go after the shell companies. We started pulling every business registered in Erie and surrounding counties with Waters, Pinehurst, or anything matching his pattern. Found 7. One was used for a golf trip business, completely fake. Another was for real estate partnerships that didn't exist. But one of them? Waters Family Education Fund, LLC? That one led us to a real bank account. And guess what? He'd been funneling money into that fund for years. But not for education. The account had transaction history showing wire transfers to a trust in the Cayman Islands. We sent everything to the Department of Justice. No more anonymous. I gave my real name. Told them I was ready to testify. That's when something I didn't expect happened. Rick's wife Connie called me. She was crying. Said she had no idea. Said Rick told her the money came from his consulting clients. That the lake house was a gift from a silent investor. She said he'd cheated on her before, but she never imagined he'd do this. I didn't know if I believed her. I wanted to scream at her. But then she said something that made me stop cold. She said, he forged my signature to open that trust fund. My name is on it. And I just got a letter from the IRS. She was going down with him, and she had nothing left to protect. So I asked her the one question I hadn't asked anyone yet. Do you still have access to his office? She said yes. Why? I said, because we're not done. Connie agreed to meet me the next day. We met at a diner on 26th Street. She looked drained, like someone had taken a vacuum to her life and sucked it all out. Her hair was messy. No makeup. She wore a wrinkled sweatshirt that said Lakeview Soccer Mom. She ordered coffee and said, you want to ruin him? I'm in. I didn't ask why. I think she needed revenge too. She still had a key to his downtown office and access to the shared Dropbox folder he used for client documents. She told me Rick never thought she was smart enough to look through it. That was his mistake. 2 nights later, we met at the office after hours. I brought Evan. Connie unlocked the door. It felt like sneaking into a crime scene. Inside, the place looked like it hadn't been touched since the seminar fallout. Desks were covered in dust. The whiteboard was wiped, but we had the photo. Evan went straight for the desktop in Rick's office. Connie logged into the Dropbox. That folder? It had everything. Copies of every fake investment report, spreadsheet templates labeled monthly BS, scanned wire transfers, even emails from other people he scammed. He kept records of it all like he thought he was building some legacy. Then Evan found something we didn't expect. A second folder hidden in a nested directory labeled Golf Trip 2019 filled with video files. Rick had been recording phone calls, even in-person meetings. He must have thought it gave him leverage or insurance. We listened to 3. In one, he coached a woman to lie to her bank to process a transfer. In another, he laughed with someone about the dumb Air Force guy who thought we were investing in real estate. And the last one? It was a call with his lawyer, bragging about how, if they ever find the Cayman's account, I'll just say Connie knew. Let her take the hit. Connie started crying right there. That's when I made my final move. I compiled everything, audio, screenshots, Dropbox files, shell company connections, the Cayman wire history, and video clips, into a giant digital folder. Then I sent it to the DOJ again, the IRS, the Pennsylvania Attorney General's office, every local and regional news station, and Rick's own church board. He was a deacon. I included one line in every email: this man used family trust to build a fraud empire. Here's the truth. Then I waited. 3 weeks later, it all blew up. Rick was arrested at the Buffalo airport trying to fly to Mexico. He used a fake ID and was carrying $14,000 in cash, 2 phones, and a laptop. The feds had enough on him to charge him with wire fraud, mail fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, money laundering, and identity theft. For forging Connie's signature, they seized his cars, froze his accounts, raided the lake house, found paperwork hidden in the walls, like literal envelopes behind drywall. This guy thought he was smarter than everyone. Connie was cleared. She gave a full statement and was granted immunity in exchange for cooperation. She divorced him the next day. The other victims and I, there were 9 of us by the end, filed a joint civil suit. We won. The court awarded us $426,000 in damages. It wasn't everything we lost, but with the liquidation of Rick's assets and his trust in the Caymans, which they forced him to repatriate, We each got a check. Mine was for $49,250, more than he took. But the best part? The court ordered him to write a letter of apology to each victim. Handwritten. No assistance. No printed text. I got mine 3 months ago. It was pathetic. He wrote, "I regret the harm I caused. I thought I was helping. I see now that I was wrong. I hope one day you'll forgive me." I didn't respond. He's in federal prison now. Sentenced to 11 years. No parole for the first 9. And me? I used part of the money to move to Pittsburgh. Got a better job. Bought a small place of my own. I still keep that whiteboard photo saved on my phone. The one with my name and the words $36K clean. I look at it sometimes. Not because I'm angry anymore, but to remind myself that family isn't always who they say they are. And real justice? Sometimes you have to dig it out yourself. Inch by inch. Just like I did.